Hello and welcome to the Apologist Bookshelf. I'm Gary Zacharias. You know, there have been a series of books out. One's called When Critics Ask. I've done a podcast on that. One's called When Cultists Ask. I've done a couple of podcasts on that one. Here's a third one in that series. Norm Geisler is the author again. It's called When Skeptics Ask, a handbook on Christian evidences. I like this book a lot. It's been out for a while. See if I can find the 1990. But they got questions about God, about other gods, questions about evil, about miracles, about Jesus, about the Bible difficulties, archaeology, science and evolution, questions about the afterlife, questions about truth, and about morals. Now, let me just say this. I think would be a really good book that you might want to put on your shelf. Things like maybe archaeology and science and evolution, since this book is now 30 years old or so, some of those things may have changed slightly, but things about miracles and about the Bible and about truth and afterlife, things like that, they don't go out of date at all. So I still think this would be a really good book for you to take a look at. I thought we'd do one that intrigues me, titled, Why is Jesus Better Than Other Teachers? Now, of course, as Christians, we say, well, it's obvious. Let's take Jesus. Is he superior to other religious or philosophical leaders? And so they compare Jesus with other leaders. And I think it's fascinating because some people say, oh, you can't judge between religions. Just pick one that resonates with you or how it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Well, that's not the way to operate. We should look for real ways to decide, discern, to compare and to decide between different religions. And one way to do that is to look at the religious founder. So here's where they start. Okay, we're going to compare Jesus to other teachers. They start with Moses. If you look at Deuteronomy 18, Moses predicted God would raise up a Jewish prophet and that anyone who didn't believe this prophet would be judged by God. So Moses predicted Jesus. Jesus had a superior revelation than Moses did. John 1:17, the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. So that's great. Moses set up some moral and social structures. That was wonderful, and it guided the nation. But the law that he set up or that he revealed to the people, it couldn't save anyone from the penalties of their sins. That's death. That's the penalty. So Jesus had a superior revelation. It was built on the foundation of Moses, but it solved the problem that the law just simply made us aware of, but didn't offer a solution for. Okay, again, comparing Jesus to Moses. Moses is the greatest of the Old Testament prophets, no doubt about that. But Jesus was more than a prophet. Look at Hebrews 3. Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant. And it says, but Christ was faithful as a son over his house. Not in his house, but over his house. So Moses served God. Yes, he did. That was wonderful. But Jesus was declared to be the Son of God with the right to rule over all other servants. The miracles of Jesus were superior, definitely. Moses performed some great miracles, but Christ were better yet. Moses never made the blind see or the deaf hear, and nothing compared with the resurrection. How about Jesus' claims? His claims were superior to Moses. Moses wasn't God. Jesus is. Moses never made a claim to be God. But Jesus did claim to be God, and he provided evidence for that with the resurrection and the things that he did during his life. So is Jesus a superior religious leader to Moses? Yes. Let's move on with another famous religious figure, Muhammad. Jesus offers a better way of salvation. Now think about what the God of Islam says. The God of Islam is pretty tough. You're going to have your deeds weighed to see if you're going to go to heaven or hell. And you don't know. That's the key thing. Jesus offers a better way of salvation. The God of the Bible has reached out to us in a special way. He sent his son to us. Muhammad didn't offer any sure hope of salvation, just guidelines. You try to do these things and maybe you'll gain Allah's favor, maybe not. But Christ did everything that was needed to get us to heaven in his death. Jesus offers a superior life to Muhammad, Geisler says. Muhammad spent a lot of his life at war. He was a polygamist, exceeded even the number of wives that he had prescribed for his religion. He plundered caravans. Jesus offers superior miracles. The miracles of Christ are wonderful. They're spectacular. Jesus offers superior claims. Muhammad never claimed to be God. Muhammad only claimed to be a prophet. But Jesus said, I am God. And he proved it by rising from the dead. Okay, so there's Moses. We talked about Muhammad. What about Hindu gurus? There are a lot of, it's kind of hard to apply a generalization to all the Hindu beliefs because there are so many sects and differences of opinion, but they had a lot of holy men they called gurus. He's morally superior to the gurus. I mean, the Hinduists, basically Hinduism says that if somebody is suffering, just let them suffer. That's their destiny. That's part of karma. But Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And who's your neighbor? Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? It's anyone in need of help. So most of the gurus, they said here, this is what Geisler is saying, they use their position to exploit their followers financially and sexually. They gave an example of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He accumulated dozens of Rolls Royces as gifts. And the Beatles actually became disenchanted with him. Remember well, maybe I'm old enough, I remember, but the Beatles got into this Eastern religion phase for a while, and the Beatles got disenchanted with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. They learned he was much more interested in the body of one of the ladies at their party than with their spirits, and they said, we made a mistake. Jesus has a superior method for enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment. You've got to understand the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads if you're going to get anywhere in the Hindu beliefs, and that's difficult sledding, but the Bible can be understood by anyone. Jesus teaches a better way of salvation. So what happens? What do the gurus teach you? This long, just depressing cycle of reincarnation, and you got to work your own way out of that. But Jesus said, you're saved by faith and your salvation is guaranteed. That's wonderful. How about Buddha? Is Jesus superior to Buddha? Well, I think Jesus teaches hope in life. That's what Geisler says. Buddhism says life is just suffering, and you got to get rid of your selfhood. Get rid of being a person. Jesus said life is a gift of God to enjoy it. That's John 10:10. And the individuals be honored supremely. Matthew 5:22. He promised hope in the life to come. That's John 14:6. That's a lot better than just snuffing yourself out of desire and yourself that the Buddha taught. Jesus teaches a better way of salvation. Buddhist is also big on reincarnation. But at the end of this, or at the end of your life in this view, it's just you're snuffed out and eradicated. You live on, but it's not you as an individual trying to attain nirvana. But Jesus promised an individual hope. You'll still be yourself. And he said to that thief on the cross, you're going to be with me today in paradise. You'll be you. Jesus teaches his own deity. He was God in the flesh. Buddha never made that claim. He offered no proof. He was just trying to point the way for other people. Well, the chapter goes on here, and I won't do all of these. He talks about Socrates, the superiority of Jesus over Socrates. No doubt about that. Taoism, better than that. Jesus has all sorts of reasons for us to turn to him as opposed to some of these others. You know, when I have spoken to classes in the past, in our apologetics class, I've also talked about different religious leaders besides the ones they mentioned here, and how you can look at their life, look at their teachings, and the things they did, and just you can make your choice. It's pretty easy. Jesus is in a step way above these. I have taught on this whole idea of trying to test and evaluate between religions and looked at founders. And so I wanted to add just a couple. The Geisler book talks about Muhammad, sure. But what about Joseph Smith? How is he in a comparison with Jesus? I don't think there's any comparison. He kept changing his story of how he interacted with God or Jesus. He was involved in stones, magical stones, that he could see things through. He said he found the Book of Abraham. It was a hieroglyphic parchment that he got, and he claimed it was actually the writings of Abraham, and they've found that, and it's not. So he was completely mistaken on many things. He introduced the idea of having more than one wife, after he'd already set up the version of his religion. So this is a pretty tough person to say he's on the level with Jesus. How about Mary Baker Eddy, the one that started Christian Science? She had stole a lot of ideas from a previous person named Quimby and claimed these were all her ideas. L. Ron Hubbard, the guy that started Scientology. Wow, take a look at his life story sometime. He was a real gas bag and got involved in crimes and all sorts of stuff. Just a terrible individual. You're not going to put him up against Jesus. How about two of the early leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Taze Russell and then Judge Rutherford? Russell believed in pyramidology, the idea that pyramids had secret numbers if you add up their length and width and things like that. He sold something called miracle wheat, so he was kind of a scam artist. The Judge Rutherford had a pretty bad track record as well, so I'm not going to spend time on them. But, I mean, you just put these other people up against Jesus, and you say there's no comparison, absolutely none at all. People like H.G. Wells and Napoleon and Einstein and others talk about how captivating Jesus is compared to other religious leaders. Jesus is unique. The sources, in other words, where we get the information about Jesus, unique compared to any other leader. The prophecies about him, the actions that he did, what he said, the comments of friends as well as enemies. I mean, think about the impact that he had on the world. I've done studies on that, just the way he raised the status of women and his emphasis on education. His followers, early Christians, pushed that. Charity, kindness, work ethic, taking care of the young, being opposed to killing your children, child sacrifice and things like this. Unbelievable difference that Jesus made. And finally, just the relationship to his religion. Every other religious leader says, hey, if you do these things, you may be able to make God happy, but you got to do them. There's always a list. With Moses, it was the law. With Muhammad, you had the things you had to do to keep Allah happy. If you're a Mormon under Joseph Smith, you have a ton of things that you have to do. And on and on and on. L. Ron Hubbard, basically you just sign a very large check to the Church of Scientology. But every other religion has things you have to do. Not Jesus. He's so different as far as his relationship to his religion. It's not doing a bunch of things. It's accepting what he's already done for us. Does that take pressure off? That's so wonderful. Okay, so one more time. This book is called When Skeptics Ask. I gave you one short chapter, a handbook of Christian evidences, and I like the book a lot. Here's what a couple people said. J.P. Moreland, for example, said, when skeptics ask, it said it's philosophically sound, broad in scope, and clearly written. It does just what a handbook should do. It makes available to a wide audience an orderly treatment of a wide range of apologetic topics. It'll be particularly useful to those who are doing evangelism with high school and college students, as well as to thinking laypersons. Josh McDowell said Geisler is one of the foremost defenders of the Christian faith, and on and on. Gary Habermas says it does some wonderful things here. It answers all sorts of objections. I strongly recommend this volume for the large number of difficult topics, the wide range of territory covered, and the insight involved in the answers. So another person said the book is crisply argued and clearly written, and I think that's true. So this is called When Skeptics Ask. But you might like his others too, When Critics Ask and When Cultists Asks. All right, well, thank you so much for your attention, and I hope your day is good, and we'll do another podcast soon.